Okay, welcome to Autodesk AutoCAD 2016. In this project, I'm going to show you how to design a structure, how to design some of the insides of the structure, and how to complete a basic introductory project of a small home. So if you've never used AutoCAD before, you want to go ahead and open it up, and you should be looking at an interface like the one in front of you. Now, AutoCAD works with drawing files. So there are many ways to open one. We can go here, New, and then select one of these types of drawing files with the default one automatically selected. Or we can just go over here where it says Start Drawing and click on that. When we do so, we're going to be presented with an interface such as this one. Now, depending on your graphics card, it might dictate how smooth or how choppy your cursor is. In my case, it's relatively smooth, but in your case, that might not be true. So if it is, then you might need to get a graphics card or a new graphics card, but if it's not, then let's just go ahead and get started. Now, we have a lot of buttons over here, and while we can use those buttons to do pretty much everything we need to do, AutoCAD is great because we can use the keyboard and essentially do everything that is located up here. And if you get good at using the keyboard, you actually end up being much faster than you would be constantly going back and forth and clicking on buttons. So let's first talk about some of the tools, and then I'm going to show you how to take it further and the codes for them. So the line tool is the most basic tool. If you select line, you're able to draw lines right away. And if you want to select one of these lines, you just need to click on it, and you'll notice that it selects. And you can click on multiple lines. You don't have to hold down on anything. And you can select multiple lines at the same time in case you wanted to, I don't know, delete them or modify them at the same time. We also have what is called a polyline, which is unique to AutoCAD, where you can draw out a line, and when you select the line, everything is selected. So it essentially acts as one object. And this is great when offsetting a line because you don't have to select every portion of the line. You just select one, and then you can like offset the entire line, meaning duplicate it and moving it. Or it's just easier to work with a lot of the tools. A lot of these tools up here, it's much easier to work with. We have the circle tool, which the basic circle essentially draws out the center and it draws out a radius. As you can see, I can type on the keyboard to dictate the radius and draw a circle that way. Alternatively, there are different types of circles we can select. So we can do a center based on the diameter. We can do a 2-point circle, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So they're pretty fun to work with. And what I recommend doing is just messing around with these tools and just trying to get a little bit of proficiency with them. The best way to learn things usually is just to practice them and see how they react. This is the arc tool. The arc tool is very nifty as well. Maybe not as user-friendly as in other softwares, but it's still pretty nice. And just like with the circle, if you click on the down arrow, there's a number of options you can use to essentially specify the type of arc you want to use. Okay, so we got a bunch of mess here. I'm just going to go ahead and delete all this. To select everything, you don't want to just click and hold and drag, because as you'll see, you create this weird selection tool. And it's great when you want to select and delete specific things if you get good at using it, good at essentially utilizing it, like this. But it also depicts different things. Moving from right to left, you have to select the entire object, like this circle over here, in order to delete it. So with the whole thing selected, but not anything else, I can delete that. This was a polyline over here, so I'd have to select the whole thing to delete that. Whereas if I moved, and I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to drag, if I move, right to left, sorry, this is right to left, then I can select that, and I can delete that. So you just have to touch a point, and it will delete itself. So that's pretty nifty. Whereas if you use this tool, I could select this and delete it, and then I could go down here and select that, and then go over here and select that line. And that was me holding it down to select all those things, to delete them. Okay. We also have a rectangle tool located right over here, an elliptical or an ellipse tool that we can select over here, and a number of other things as well. But we won't focus on that one right now. So I'm going to go ahead, select all that, delete it, and let's go ahead and we're going to start this house project. Now I want to draw a rectangle, and I can go over here, click on that, and draw out a nice rectangle. It looks lovely. Or we can do it the way AutoCAD wants us to do it. And to do that, we're going to essentially use the keyboard, and we're going to type in the command we want. So we want rectangle, so I'm going to type in REC. And here's the rectangle tool, or right over there. You could click it, or you can hit enter. Up to you. I usually just hit enter. And now I have the rectangle tool selected. So right now I can go ahead, click on my screen, and I can draw out the rectangle, like so. I can click this, and I've made a rectangle. The only problem with this rectangle is that it hasn't been dimensioned. And while we can use the dimension tool up here, click on it, and we can dimension this rectangle, and you have to sometimes zoom in to see the numbers, it's actually a little tricky to change. So instead of trying to change it and alter it using the number of dimensioning tools we have, we're just going to go ahead and make it right the first time. So I'm going to type rec again for rectangle. I'm going to click on a corner point where I want to start this rectangle. And before hitting enter or clicking anywhere, instead I'm going to type in DIM, standing for dimension, inside this box, and I'm going to hit enter. When you do so, Autodesk AutoCAD is going to ask you for the length of the rectangle. If you look what's hovering on my cursor. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's say 20, enter. And then it also wants the width, which could be 10. So I think that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And as you can see, based on where I selected that corner point, I essentially created a rectangle. And I'm able to move it where I want. So I'm going to put it over here, click on there, and now I'm going to dimension this rectangle. So DIM for dimension, enter. And I'm going to select this point. I'm going to offset this by 2, so I'm going to type in 2, enter. And same with the width. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to type in 2, enter, and now both of those have been dimensioned. And if you take a look at the numbers, you have 20 and 10, just like so. Now, you might notice that this isn't 20 inches and 10 inches. That's because AutoCAD works more with scale than it does with actual units. Meaning that if you design it correctly, it doesn't really matter what the scale is. You can just calibrate that scale into whatever you need it to be it a 3D print or a very large object. As long as the image is right in terms of scale and proportion with itself and other objects in the drawing, then the whole thing should be fine. Cool. So we have a 20 by 10 rectangle, and let's just go ahead and say this is going to be the outside of our house. I'm going to delete these dimensions for reasons due to engineering, let's say. And we're going to go ahead, and this is going to be the inner wall of our house, and we're going to need an outer wall. And instead of drawing another rectangle on the outside, we're just going to utilize the rectangle that we currently have, and we're going to offset this. So the offset command is just OFF for offset. I'm going to hit enter, and then you can select the object that you would like to offset as soon as you specify the distance. So let's go ahead and I'm going to say 2, enter, and now I'm going to select the object that I want to offset. So since I have it at 2 and I select this, you'll notice right away that I can select an offset of 2, either inside or outside this rectangle. So I'm going to select the outside because I said this was my inner wall, and now I have an outer wall as well. So something cool we can do now is let's go ahead and change this from 2D to 3D. To do that, there's several ways. One, we could utilize this cube up here. However, sometimes, and this is just my personal opinion, people become too reliant on this cube. Like I said, there's button clicks, there's keyboard clicks for everything in this program. So if you get good at using those, then you don't have to worry about clicking on things or worry about utilizing this as much as you need to. This should be mainly used for a tool for leveling your object or getting it at that precise view. So to make this 3D in a sense, because we want to make a house like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift, and while holding down Shift I'm going to click in the middle button of the scroll wheel, or the middle scroller, and I'm going to turn the screen. So I'm holding down Shift, holding in the scroll wheel of the mouse, and I can turn the screen. So I've turned it to a 3D-ish view, and let's go ahead and raise this object. So to raise it, we have to do a command known as extrude. And if you've ever used a 3D program before, what extrude is it raises the object so it's an actual 3D mass. To type the extrude command, it says EXT. I'm going to hit enter once I've done that, and now I have to select the object that I would like to extrude. So I'm going to select the outer line, and sure, why not, the inner line. And with both of those selected, I'm going to hit enter. And now you'll notice that if I'm just hovering my mouse and moving up and down, I can control how far this object is extruded from 0. And it's creating a 3D mass. So let's go ahead and say 4.5. And we created a mass that is 4.5, so 20 by 10 by 4.5. It looks pretty nice. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like if it was an actual solid. Right now we're in a wireframe mode. You might have noticed it from this over here, 2D wireframe. We're going to switch it over to a shaded mode. So I'm going to click on that title, go over to shaded, and click on that. And there you go. We have a shaded rectangle that is going to become our home. So anyway, that concludes this first video. I hope to see you in part 2, where we are going to transform this lovely box into a house. Till then, peace.